All right, so we're going to go over some of the questions from the Jeopardy that you did in class. And these are all the questions I'm going to go over. So even though there's more than these questions, these are all the kind of different types that we have. And the answers are provided for you for all these as well. So if you need help with any of the questions I'm not going over, just let me know. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on these questions. All right, so when you're solving for a variable, the first thing we need to do is see, well, what variable is it they want us to isolate? So it says 8x minus 2y is equal to 30, and it says to solve for y and to simplify as much as possible. So when we want to solve and get y by itself, well, right now this 8x is being added to it, so I need to subtract 8x to move it to the other side. So I get minus 2y is equal to negative 8x plus 30. And now I still need to isolate that y. So since negative 2 is being multiplied to it, I need to divide it on both sides. And now remember, this negative 2 needs to be divided into both terms. So maybe write it separately like this underneath. And then we can isolate that y and say, well, positive y is equal to negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4x. And 30 divided by negative 2 is minus 15. So this will be our final answer. In the future, when we're doing 2 units from now, it's really important that you guys know that this negative 2 needs to be divided into both terms because we're writing what this is called a standard form. And we're rewriting from standard to slope intercept. So it's really important that you're able to do this in the future to make it easier for us to graph and solve problems. And the one thing that people forget is that this number, when we divide, needs to be divided into both of our terms, and we reduce both of our terms individually. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, so for this one, we're solving multi-step equations. Our first thing we need to do is simplify as much as we can on each side of our equation. There's nothing to simplify on this side. But on here, we have our parentheses, which means we need to distribute the 3 in. So we get 6x minus 12 plus 8 is equal to 12x minus 16. And then I need to keep going. I have 2 constants here, so I can combine them and get 6x minus 4 is equal to 12x minus 16. And now that I simplified everything as much as I can, I need to move my variables to one side of the equation and my constants to the other. So I'm going to move my variables to the left because that's just the way I like to solve them. So to do that, I'll subtract 12x from both sides, and this cancels out. So minus 6x minus 4 is equal to negative 16. So since I moved my variables to the left-hand side, I need to move my constant to the right. So since it's minus 4, I will add 4 to both sides. So now I get negative 6x is equal to negative 12. And then my last step that I need to do is I need to go ahead and divide each side by negative 6 to isolate that variable x. And then I get x is equal to a positive 2. And to check our work, we can plug it back into the equation. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so for this question, we have 3 over 5 is equal to 15 over 2x minus 3. So remember, this problem is called a proportion. And that's whenever we have 2 fractions that are equal to each other. And to solve our proportions, we do what's called cross multiplying. We multiply our one numerator with the opposite denominator, and then the other numerator with the remaining denominator. And then from here, we just need to make sure we're multiplying correctly. So you see I put it in parentheses because that 3 needs to be multiplied to both the 2x and the minus 3. So we need to make sure we distribute. So 6x minus 9 is equal to 75. And then we just solve from here. This is a pretty basic question once we get past our cross multiplying. So we add 9 to both sides, and we get 6x is then equal to 84. And then our last step will be divide each side by 6, and we get x is equal to 14. And that will be our final answer. All right, so from here, the questions let you know that it was going to be a special case. On your test, it won't. But when you're told it's a special case, we know it's either going to be no solution or infinitely many. So let's go ahead and solve this question. When we have, first thing we do is look to see, can we simplify? So on this side of the equation, we can simplify our negative 8x minus x to give us negative 9x. So now we have negative 9x plus 5 is equal to, here I have negative 6x and negative 3x, so they're like terms. So it becomes negative 9x plus 5. Now, we need to move our variable. Here, something should hopefully jump out at you, but if it doesn't, it's fine. We need to move our variables to one side of the equation, so I'm going to add this 9x to move it to the other side. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. But when I do this on both sides, they happen to cancel out. And now I'm just left with the statement of 5 is equal to 5. And this is a true statement. And when we have a true statement, that means that anything we plug in will work. So our answer is infinitely many. So it's all real numbers and infinitely many solutions. All right, so the next question, same thing, special cases. So we know it's going to be one of the two answers, which you won't have that told to you on a test. But at least now, if you don't get one of those answers, you know it should be one of them. But same thing, we need to simplify everything as much as we can. So first I need to distribute and get 6x minus 15 plus 12. And on this side, I will combine my like terms right away and get 6x. And minus 8 plus 11 is plus 3. And then here I have minus 15 plus 12. So 6x minus 3 is equal to 6x plus 3. So it's almost the same, but it's drastically different. So don't just forget about our signs here. So I'm going to move my 6x to the left-hand side. So when I subtract 6x from both sides, my variables are going to cancel out, and now I get minus 3 is equal to positive 3. What happens is sometimes people will forget to bring that minus sign down with that number, so don't forget. And negative 3 does not equal positive 3. That is a false statement. So when it's false, that means it is no solution. All right, now on to the next question. All right, so when we're solving absolute value equations, remember the first thing we need to do is isolate it. So we need to get the absolute value all by itself. And remember, if it gets confusing for you, go ahead and substitute in a variable that's not part of our question in for the absolute value. So we can rewrite and say, well, y is going to be equal to the absolute value of 3v minus 8. And then we can say, well, 5y minus 10. How would I isolate that y? By dividing 5 from both sides, and now y is equal to negative 2. But remember, we created that variable y. So now we need to go back to the original context of the problem and substitute what we created for y and say, well, the absolute value of 3v minus 8 is now equal to negative 2. And you don't have to do that. You could have right away, if this is something that doesn't confuse you, you could have right away just kept it in this form and divided each side by 5 to get to your absolute value of 3v minus 8 is equal to negative 2. It's just showing you how you can do it if that isolating with the absolute value confuses you, because some people want to try and distribute the 5 in, which will not be correct. Right? So now once we do this, well, the absolute value of 2 is equal to 2, and the absolute value of negative 2 is equal to 2. So remember, we can never take the absolute value and get a negative number. This answer is after we take the absolute value. So since no absolute value can ever be negative, this answer is no solution. Right? We can take the absolute value of a negative number, and it will still give us positive. But we can't take the absolute value and get a negative in return. So this answer is no solution. So just make sure that you're isolating your absolute value first. Sorry, we're not going over 1,000. We're going to go over 800. So we're not going to do the 1,000 question. We're going to do the 800. So I want to point out the difference between this. All right, so now we have negative 4 times the absolute value of w minus 1 is equal to negative 8. So you might stop and say, oh, it's no solution because it's equal to negative 8. But remember, we can't make that decision until we isolate our absolute value. So since it's being multiplied by negative 4, I need to divide each side by negative 4. And now the absolute value of w minus 1 is equal to 2. So it looked like it was no solution and set equal to a negative number to begin with. But after we isolate, it actually turned to a positive number. So now we need to create our two equations. W minus 1 is equal to 2, or w minus 1 is equal to negative 2. Once we do that, we now solve. We add 1 to both sides, so w is equal to 3. We add 1 to both sides, or w is equal to negative 1. So we get the answer of negative 1 or 3 for our variable w. All right, so for this problem, we're translating the equation. It says 8 less than the product of 5 and a number is 45. So remember, when we see 8 less than, that's one of the ones that's actually meaning minus 8. Right? So whatever we're doing, we have to subtract 8 from it. 8 less than 20 is 12. And we get that by doing 20 minus 8 is equal to 12. That is 8 less than 20. So when we see 8 less, that means we need to subtract 8. So 8 less than the product. Remember, product is one of those ones where when we see the word n, we can cross it out and write what the operation is, which is multiplication. So the product of 5 and a number is 5n. And then 8 less than that will be 5n minus 8 is means equal and 45. And on your test, you will have to define your variable. So n represents an unknown number. All right, now we're going to move on to the next question. All right, so for this problem, it says the quotient of 5 times a number and 4 increased by 12 is 32. So remember, when we see the word quotient, product, sum, or difference, this word, the very next time we see n, we just need to replace it with the operation. So since quotient means division, when I see the word n, that's where we're dividing. So I see that it's 5 times a number is being divided by 4. right? So now the way I can represent 5 times a number is 5n, and it's being divided by 4, so it's 5n over 4. When it says increased after that, that means that we're adding after we do that division. If we wanted to include um, that the addition in with our denominator, it would have had to have said the quotient of 5 times the number and the sum. So you see it's including the sum within that. So this is just the quotient of 5 times the number and 4. So this is how we would represent that. Increased by 12 is plus 12. Is means equal and 32. And once again, on your test, you will need to define that n represents an unknown number. Right? When it comes to word problems, there's really no magic wand that we can do for you that you can all of a sudden understand this. You just have to practice because there's a lot of different variations on how we can write these. So you just need to go through and actually practice these word problems in order for you to better understand them. So when you see the differences between how it's written, you know how to translate. All right. So some people are trying to write plus 12 in your answer on your Jeopardy question, but this is just a quotient of 5 times the number and 4. So that's all that we are dividing there is just by 4. And then at the end, we're increasing that by 12. All right. There's one more question we're going over, and that's it for this video. All right, so for this problem, it says Vera is half the age as Linda. Tanya is four less than 4 times the age of Linda. If their combined age is 62, write an equation to represent the scenario and define your variable. You do not need to solve. So for here, we have 3 different people. And remember, for now, we only know how to solve with one variable. So we need to rewrite all these people's ages in reference to only one person. And since Vera and Tanya both come back to Linda's age, that means we're using Linda to generate their expression. So L, I'm just going to say that Linda is going to be equal to L. So anytime I see L, that's Linda's age. So when we are doing Vera, well, Vera is equal to half the age of Linda. So to represent half the age of Linda, we can say it's 1/2 of L. And Tanya, once again, I need to rewrite it in terms of Linda, so in terms of L, and she's 4 less than 4 times the age of Linda. So remember, 4 less means I'm subtracting 4 from it. 4 times the age of Linda is 4L minus 4. So if all of their ages is combined to 62, I can just add up these expressions. L, 1/2 L, and 4L minus 4. So that means L plus 1/2 L plus 4L minus 4 is equal to 62 because it says that their combined age is 62. That's the equation. You don't need to solve. That's just setting it up. And L represents Linda's age. Oops. And that is defining our variable, and this is our equation that we set up. All right, that is it for this video.